Camera set up here, so I'm just sorting that out. Oh, I think I heard somebody calling my name. That household is winding up a little bit. People are getting ready, running around, doing stuff. I think my son just called me. All right. Let's see if we can sort this camera out. Yeah. Welcome to my morning. Yeah. So, interesting stuff. Looks like, in a matter of less than a week, America will have a new president. So that ought to be pretty interesting. I don't know. How do you think it'll go? I think we need to create a world that is a little bit more, a little less polarized, a little bit more. I think I don't want to say we gotta listen to each other because that just seems a little lovey-dovey. You know, I think I can understand why we're in the situation we're at, but what I don't get, and I'm trying to figure out, and it'll only take a supreme effort of empathy to be able to negotiate these ideas in my own mind. But this idea of okay, so they've been able to track some of the biggest spikes during the second wave of coronavirus in the United States, and all of these sort of events are occurring coincidentally with the route of Trump's biggest rallies, right? So there's almost a 1-to-1 correlation of some of the largest spikes and these massive rallies, right? So it just seems really odd to me that there'd be a situation where you would have people. Okay, so let's take that. I'm just trying to formulate my thoughts here, right? So let's take that notion, couple that with an interview with some of sort of the more devout supporters of Trump. And there was this one woman who was interviewed whose father died of coronavirus. And everybody around her's getting infected. And yet she steadfastly refuses to believe that coronavirus is a problem. And she believes that Trump is correct when, he says that it's we're coming around the bend on it, and it's going to ease up. And I think it's so blatantly obvious that there's this denial of fact. I mean, let's divorce politics out of the equation for a second. It's just this idea of being able to step outside of yourself and analyze certain conditions of what's happening in life from a factual viewpoint. Yeah, I mean, we can't completely, entirely divorce ourselves from emotional responses. And yeah, a lot of times some of the biggest decisions in our lives are driven by emotion. And I think this is where Biden is falling down, because he's a voice of reason, but there's no emotional impetus. There's no passionate drive that I think is firing up the Biden side of the campaign. But more importantly, I think that I'm having trouble with people formulating these steadfast opinions when faced with irrefutable facts. Not facts that as I'm presenting it to you, as I'm trying to argue with you, but just things happening in life in front of your face. And then just that deliberate act of throwing a blinder in front of you and saying, no, it's not happening. It's difficult to fathom. It really is. Yeah, I don't know. It's something that bears a little thinking of, because, to be honest, and I've said this before, I think we're making a big mistake by assuming Donald Trump's the problem. Donald Trump's not the problem. 40 million? Was it 40? Almost 50 million people voted for him. That's the problem. That's not a small number. That's 40 million people who believe that that dude's word is the word of God, the word of law, the word of science. It's fascinating to me. It's not like you fooled a small group of people. That's like 40 million. It's a phenomenal number to me. Phenomenal. You can't lay it at the feet of cult-like adoration. I don't think. You know? Because those are sort of, on the whole, small anomalies. Events that happen with isolated communities of people, right? Whereas we always have, again, one of the big things about cults is they have to isolate you from contrary opinions to their doctrine, right? That doesn't happen in the UK. It doesn't happen in America. You know, we can say metaphorically that it does with social media and echo chambers and all that stuff, but no, it doesn't really happen, right? Because we have differing opinions that confront us on a daily basis. So I refuse to believe it's like this cult-like adoration, especially when we're talking about 40 million people. I know there's North Korea, and I know North Koreans, look at their supreme leader as some sort of deity. I get that. I think a little bit of that is hyperbole. And sort of the way North Korea has marketed itself. But it also, they have a black curtain around their media, right? So they carefully control it. So it's a singular opinion, right? You know, you could say something similar is happening in America with Fox News being the dominant information source and Facebook, but no, it's different, right? There is exposure to a varied amount of opinion. Otherwise, the arguments wouldn't be so vehement, and there wouldn't be the rise of the intellectual dark web, right? People who are educated and rational, right? Who are supporting the opinions of the people who refuse to see the events unfolding in front of their eyes. So it's just interesting to me, right? And there's a lot of gears and mechanisms in operation. You know, I believe when you look at intellectuals from the right, they're more sort of encompassing free speech, brandishing it really as a sledgehammer, in effectively saying open discourse is what we need. So here's the difficulty of arguments of that nature, is because it's true. Open discourse is what we need, right? I think jurisprudence over the way we speak or what we say, that's the difficult area, because I'm a proponent of free speech, right? But then there's like, well, what constitutes hate speech? And, there is an immense power to somebody who's a wonderful orator, right? There's an immense amount of power for the ability to just speak well and engage an audience. And I think that we don't equate that at the same level as physical weaponry. Well, maybe we do. Maybe we do. You know, I think there is evidence in the past of publications, books, ideas, philosophers who history deemed dangerous. I don't know if that's right either. I think there needs to be. Here's what I would like to see. I'd like to see an open academic forum where various opinions can discuss things out in the open that are diametrically opposed, and yet a session of debate will close with a round of handshakes, right? It's difficult, not impossible. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a very, very strong thing to talk about this morning, other than to say that we need to keep an open mind. Now, why am I sort of vexing? Why am I so vexed in terms of trying to figure this out? Because I want to write a character like this. Well, actually, I have. I've laid the brickwork for a character of this nature. So, with my story, Keep Me Alive, about a half vampire having to escort the last living human being to the vampire queen and her sect and this kind of thing. Very, very simple kind of premise. The last living human is very, very much right-wing conservative in their thinking, right? And very sort of outdated, misogynistic and things like that. But there has to be something redeemable about this character. I think what I'm trying to do is, by creating this character, I think his name's Kevin, by creating Kevin, I'm trying to understand the essential humanity that's driving that person, right? You know, we can't look at people have an opposing opinion to us as being stupid or thick or evil or, because we're not talking about one or two people who might be a bit Yahoo. We're talking about 40 million, 50 million people. That's a lot. That's a lot. So we need to understand where they're coming from. Why? Because we have to live with them. We all have to live. Like, what are you going to do? Right? If you've got a few people whose opinions you don't like, you can just avoid them. You can cut them out or ban them from your Facebook friends list. You could, if it's somebody who's dangerously inflammatory with hate language, you can lock them up, right? What are you going to do with 40 million, 50 million people? You can't exactly lock them up. You can't exactly avoid that personality type forever, right? So if we take a look at, let's just even say not half, let's say 1/3 of the population, that's a lot, that's a huge chunk, has that particular way of thinking. We have to live with them, right? You can say, no, we don't. We don't have to live with them. They're full of shit. Right? Whatever. But, that's ideological. It's not reality, right? The reality of it is you inhabit the same geographical regions together. Loosely. Right? So to do that, there needs to be a little bit of an understanding. Right? Which, to be fair, I think the left side is more open to that than the right. The right paints a picture of left-wing progressives being social justice warriors, inflexible, blah, 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 blah. Okay? And then they pick these isolated incidents of outrage culture. But to be honest, the majority of left-wing progressive thinkers that I've run into, academics, musicians, artists, writers, generally, from my scope of experience, and I'm talking maybe 30, 40 people, have all been like me, really open-minded, willing to explore a different opinion, willing to talk. To me, it's like the fallacy of the militant vegetarian, preaching to everybody that they can't eat meat. You ever meet a vegetarian? I haven't met a single vegetarian like that. All the vegetarians I meet are like, yeah, cool, eat that. I don't eat that, I eat this. And it's usually the meat eater goes, what are you doing? Tell me I can't eat this. The vegetarian's usually like, no, man, I'm just saying I don't eat it. I'm eating this over here, right? So, to me, I see more evidence of more vitriol coming from the other side, to be honest. Most left-wing types that I've met have usually been fairly chilled. But then it's a vast generalization made from the limited scope of my experience looking out my back garden window, right? And I've warned you guys about the danger of looking out your back garden window before you formulate an opinion. That's global. Anyway, that's enough for me today, I think. Just sort of thinking out loud as the election draws closer. I'm very, very curious to see people's behavioral patterns and see where it ends up. Anyway, I've only just left you, right? So I'm taking that hat off. I think I'm kind of woken up, but we're gonna take a look at testing out our little connection, right? And then I'll move on a little bit because I want to explore the level sequencer. I haven't touched it in maybe over a year. So I want to make sure there's no surprises because I'm going to be talking about this today, right? So here I've got AnyDesk running my server downstairs. So I'm going to pop this open, maximize this, right? And we are going to pop into, should be the teaser one project. I'm going to float over and double check. So that's on my Google Drive. And we're going to open that project. Now there's a problem with the Google Drive and I'm going to sort it in a sec. Right. I'll save that for when I'm in the lecture with the students because I'm going to run them through setting up RAID drive and then downloading free file sync and sort of manufacturing a kind of Perforce-ish workflow, right? I'll tell you why the Perforce server isn't up. A, I haven't had an opportunity to go down to the university to do it, and B, I don't want to set it up here at home because it costs me on my electric bill to have that run 24/7, right? So I'm not really looking forward to doing that. Okay, whilst that opens up here, I'm going to flip over to my Unreal Engine project here on the client or artist workstation. So let's fire this guy up. So it'll take a few minutes, I think, to get going. As we're waiting for those to fire up, I'm going to talk a little bit about the issues with Soft Ether. So the Soft Ether server, which is this guy here, I might as well just keep these both hanging out on this desktop window, right? The problem with the Soft Ether server is that the secure NAT functionality apparently looks to be the culprit in terms of throttling your bottleneck, right? It's either that or there's a bridging functionality that needs to be activated in the server. I think it had a large impact on my streaming. I think it was probably the one culprit that throttled my upload speed and made for some horrible streaming experiences, right? So, but I do need it, so I do need to sort it out. So I'm going to take a look at it over the weekend, perhaps, when I'm not streaming, and then we'll see if we can get the settings tweaked just right so we don't have the bandwidth issues that were driving us crazy. When my students tried to connect with each other, same issue, right? The bandwidth was doggedly slow. So let's see if we can improve that situation over the weekend. The other thing that I'm going to try to do today is walk you guys through the Maya Live link once this morning Oh, actually, you know what? I'll probably take my tests offline. So I'm going to take my tests offline, see if I can get the Maya Live Link working. There are a few things that I don't know are out of the box yet. The primary one being a direct link between Maya's viewport and the Unreal Engine level. Not the preview window, but the level, right? So I want to be able to directly connect with that. And it might take a little bit of blueprint scripting to get that functionality to work. But I don't know. We'll see. I will take a look at it. So in terms of working off the cloud drive, right? So as you can see, it's posing a bit of an issue, right? There's no way an empty level should be taking this long to load up. So I don't want to encounter any issues with this going forward. So I'm going to make adjustments there. But the other thing that I recommend you guys grab is Speed Test from Ookla, Ookla, right? So it's a nice, handy little app to have kind of hanging out on your PC, right? Because you can click go. It's good that I run this now. So 28 millisecond ping. All right. 28 milliseconds. We're looking to be running at about 37, almost 40 megabits per second. So that's cool. And my upload speed, 7, 8 megabits per second-ish. So that's cool. I'm also dying to set up my Nighthawk, my Netgear Nighthawk Pro, because the diagnostics that Netgear provides you with that router are so comprehensive. It's awesome. Right? So actually, when I get it set up, I'll walk you guys through it. I'm not paid by Netgear or anything like that. It's just after a bunch of diligent shopping for a router that had really good performance, that's the one I landed on, and it's just hasn't failed to impress me. So yeah, that's cool. The speed test, what I want to do is I want to actually, where can I find app settings? What I want to do is I want to try to find it and add it as a shortcut to my desktop. I suppose I don't need it as a shortcut. I'm trying to figure out. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how I can add this. The installer did something weird, right? You know, most other applications I can right-click and find in folder, or I wonder if I can't drag and drop, but you can right-click, send to desktop or that kind of stuff. But it doesn't seem like I can do that here. App settings, pin to, yeah, open. No, it doesn't look like I can do that here. What's this? Network speed test. Oh well. It's not a big deal. I don't really need it on my desktop. Just would have been nice to have. Okay. So, upload failed to cloud. Let's make sure my RAID drive is connecting properly. So I'm going to come over in here and let's open that up. Yeah, we're connected okay. That's cool. Just gonna have a quick little look. I wonder what the settings window. Okay, I see. That's cool. It's a new version. Cool. I'm just gonna leave it at that for now, though. Just for now. Okay. Hopefully, it won't be that much longer. It's a bit crazy. So I'll just walk you guys through what I'm going to be testing. So not only are we going to do the multi-user connection, might as well do a quick little review here while we're waiting for Unreal to launch. Ooh, do we have connection issues? Okay, that's good. So I'm just going to pop down. Yeah, that's right. So we're making sure that we've got both instances of Unreal Engine have the same setup in the project, including the same profile of plugins. Yep, we sorted that out, right? And we're going to create a session, create a server, and then a session, right? And then we're going to launch the multi-user server. We activated the plugin, so this should be fairly straightforward, right? You just go up to the sort of the shelf icons there above the UE4 viewport. Click on the expand arrow. It'll give you a drop down with other options that would normally be up here if you've got a, I don't know, higher resolution monitor, right? And then there's your multi-user browser, multi-user utilities and session browser, right? We'll go in there. We'll start a server, right? Launch that. And once that gets going, we'll create a session, or there might be a session for us there already. And we'll join that session, and then we'll flip over to this PC here and join the session as well. And then we should see each other in that session, right? Now, the reason why I'm connecting to the multi-user session is just to test a few things in terms of latency across the LAN. So that'll be kind of interesting. So I'm going to mimic working as two different users, two different locations, just to see what sort of issues we run into, right? And then this is just going through how we're going to set up our cinematic workspace. Wow, that's still loading, man. That's crazy. So, after getting refamiliar with the navigation, we're going to talk a little bit about the viewport setup here. Let me minimize that, right? So basically, what we want to do, and the goal of this, is to have a separate monitor where we do all of our camera design, but we also want our perspective viewport where we can do all of our work, very similar to what I was talking about in terms of Maya and having a tear-off copy window, and that tear-off copy would have your camera. So it looks like first we're going to split the layout into two, and once we got two panels, we'll turn one perspective into a cinematic view, and we'll turn on the safe action and safe title. Remember, I did this inside of Maya. I thought this was only a me thing, but I guess there's a lot of us who've worked in animation who are used to having sort of some kind of field guide or ground glass on the screen, and so Unreal Engine has incorporated it. So you can turn on the safe action, safe title, right? It's just a nice reminder that you're working inside a cinematic view. And then here, we're just cleaning up a few different things, turning off the show FPS, don't really need it, and turning off the game view, immersive mode, just fine-tuning some of the settings here, right? And then once we get into the cinematic view, we'll see a lot of game icons floating around. And I don't mind having the game icons like, spawn points and things like that, sort of all littered all over the editor window, but in the cinematic view, yeah, I want to hit the G key, go into game mode, and get rid of all the level icons, right? So that's that there. And then, so viewport, open a viewport tab, use this to view and edit the current level. So this, I wish I'd made better notes for. So is that a tear off copy? I've written tear off. So we split screen, and looks like it does. Create a second monitor. Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Okay, so it looks like this tears off a second viewport. Yeah, that makes sense, viewport 2. So open a viewport tab. So it probably opens a second viewport up here, right? And then you can just drag and drop it, rip it off, right? I'm going to make a note, create a second viewport tab, and then tear off. So that might make a little bit more sense. When I made these PowerPoint notes, it was, again, a year ago. So sometimes it's hard to plug back into what I was thinking back then. Let's see. Unreal is now open. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to set this PowerPoint off to one side, and we'll walk it through, right? So yes, I know I wrote this PowerPoint, but it's been a while, so I want to road test it a little bit. Okay, cool. So we've got our Unreal Engine open here. We got the exact same game engine open here. So I'm going to pop open the server downstairs. I'm going to kill this. Let's maximize our experience. See what I mean about the viewport icons? They stretch completely across if you've got a large enough high resolution monitor. So we're going to come in here and we're going to open up our session browser. And we're going to launch that server. Well, now we've got a multi-user server running. So do we have a session in here? Yes, we do. That is our session, right? I'm going to right click. I don't think oh yeah. So I'll join that session. And then that should be me in there. It might take I think it takes yeah, it does take a few minutes for whatever it's doing in the background. I don't know, digital handshake, etc. Connecting up. Looks like it's doing something anyway. And we'll just to be on the safe side, we'll make sure that that connection is established before we try and connect from this workstation here. I'm going to get it ready by, again, if you don't have enough monitor space, you can come to the drop down here. Notice how it moves all the shelf icons into a drop down menu, and then you just head on over to your multi-user utility. Ooh. And it's syncing up. That's cool. So somewhere back there, Unreal has some logs. So it's referring to the logs, and it's syncing them up. Uh-oh. We got a UI freeze here. Quite possibly because we're running the same project location. So even though we have two different instances of Unreal Engine running, two different locations, we're accessing the same project data on the cloud drive. So as one instance of Unreal, in this case the server, is syncing to that data from the cloud, that's what's causing the latency or the delay here on the artist workstation copy of Unreal. Now again, with we would be able to circumvent this with Perforce, because in that particular scenario, the two instances would grab that copy of the project data on Perforce and then replicate it to the two machines. So in effect, it would only be drawing project data from its local hard drives, right? And that at the end of the day, you would sync that back up again. Although I wonder how that would work with a networked copy. I think perhaps we can add assets live here because we're working from the same project, whereas in a Perforce scenario, we would have to add assets, then commit them through. Possibly. We'll see. Okay, so it looks like Unreal has let go of this instance of Unreal. And let's pop into the session browser. Right. So we're going to pop up here and let's join this session as well. So it's attempting a remote connection. Hopefully all will go well. And then we'll be in. It's a fairly lengthy process this morning, but there we go. Right. Just going to reply to an email really quick here. Okay. All right, so we got the same synchronizing activity window. We got this one at 65. It's interesting because I don't think we ran into this issue yesterday, or did we? I don't think we did. All right, so let that cook through, and all right, So now, while that's doing its thing, I'll pop back over into our PowerPoint. And sort of talk this through, right? Okay, so we've got our second monitor, right? So that's just the monitor setup. You know what? I'm going to replicate this. So I've got clear-cut categories. So I understand that this will just be setting up the cinematic monitor. And then in here, we're tearing off a copy of that, right? And here, we're actually building our level sequences, right? And that's add master sequence. Oh, I've already got that there. Man. Okay, let's move that down, right? Great minds think alike. In this case, me thinking like me. Okay. I need another cup of coffee, I think. All right, so there we go. Create level sequence. So I am using the cinematic dropdown. I had trouble with this last week. Couldn't remember where it was. I thought it was under UE4's create menu. Are we in? Let's see. Let's double check. Look like we might be in. No. Not in yet. Okay, so setting up cinematic monitor. We don't need that anymore. So we get that create level sequence. So we've created our cinematic monitor. That's really cool. And then off we go. We're going to create, we're going to add level sequence data to the cinematic monitor, right? And we access it here, right? Level sequence data to cinematic monitor. No active level sequence detected. Please edit a level sequence to enable full controls. Right. So the cinematic monitor is ready to accept level sequence data. Okay. So, you know what? Actually, man, I think I had it right before, right? Level sequence data. Yeah, that's what threw me. It should be cinematic monitor ready to receive level sequence data, right? And then next, right? Because it says no level sequence detected, right? So let's put no level sequence detected. And perhaps we'll take this guy, maybe shove that in, and then italicize it and bring it down to 14 point. Yeah, that's all right. Cool. That's just a reminder to take a look down here. Let's check how Unreal's going on. What is happening? Wow. This is having a large amount of difficulty. Let's take a look. There might be so that's at 67%. Yeah. I have a sneaky suspicion this session's not going to happen. I wasn't expecting the load times to be so crazy on this. But let me walk through the rest of this in terms of the PowerPoint. It helps me think to talk it through as well, right? So then we're going to pop into creating that level sequence, right? So now this is kind of my own invention. What I'm trying to do here, and I may have overcomplicated things a touch. I have the suspicion that I'm overcomplicating things quite a bit because I'm previewing other level sequence tutorials, and they don't go to this granular level of organization. And there were some problems and issues that were introduced by this structure. But this is the way I think. right, for larger project. And the one shortcoming that I find with a lot of level sequence tutorials that I run across on YouTube is they usually deal with an isolated case, meaning one scene, one shot sequence, that's it, real isolated action. And I'm trying to think in terms of something larger. That's why the first project that I'm engaging is a teaser. So inside that teaser, there's at least 2 locations because I want to solve that issue of how do we transition from one location to another location, and about a dozen shots because I want to see what that deals with. And then I'm going to move from the teaser to a trailer, and the trailer has 4 locations, right? So gradually increasing complexity, right, as I go. All right, so the one thing that I need a reminder of is that there are 2 types of level sequencers. Level sequence entities, I guess, right? So there's a standard level sequence, and then there's a master sequence. The difference between the 2 is a level sequence just gives you a timeline. It's just an editorial timeline. Whereas a master sequence is sort of a bundle. It's a sequence sandwiched in with a bunch of shot folders. So it's kind of like a template, right? It's a template for you to set up your scenes really, really quickly, right? One of the things I've noticed in this PowerPoint is I've named my scenes sequences. I don't know why. I suspect because I wanted to stick with the level sequence naming convention. But if I were to do this again, I would set up my acts, my scenes, and my shots per scene. Typically, on really large, complex projects, you would have acts, sequences, scenes in that sequence, and then shots. But that's really complicated. I do tend to think several levels of granularity down. But we'll see. Let's walk this through. So for this particular setup, I'm thinking about how I would set things up traditionally for an episodic production. So there were a number of different issues that kind of arose. The primary one being that I'm thinking in terms of a linear editorial process with baked shots. Whereas the level sequence, it's not a baked shot. You're actually working. It's kind of like you're working with your film crew inside the shot at the same time the shot is in the editorial timeline. You'll see what I mean when I dive into a level sequence. So the first thing I wanted to do was set up a whole bunch of folders, right? So I'm separating Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, which it's not being unnecessarily pedantic, because one of the things I like is just a different flavor, different art direction, different production design, different emotional thrust for each act, right? And having them separate really sort of helps me focus the design, right? So here I'm creating a level sequence for the entire episode, right? So the level sequence will appear and I'll drop my Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 on that entire editorial timeline, right? So in that regard, I'm creating separate act folders, right? And then inside the act folders, right? So we've got a level sequence for, I'm actually going to label these guys. Right? Just because at first glance, it's difficult to tell. Right? Okay. So inside is a level sequence per act, right? Right? Because I don't need subfolders for the act. It's just a timeline to organize everything, right? So all the sequences for Act 1 are there, and then that is added to the entire episode timeline, right? That's the thinking anyway. Okay, and let's double check our timeline here. Wow, that's not happening today, guys, right? I'll just go through the organization bit, and then we'll kind of move on because I have a few emails and stuff that I need to attend to here. Okay, so real quick, after that, then we get into the master sequence, right? So we got a level sequence for the entire episode, level sequence per act, right? Then a master sequence, right? Per sequence. This will encapsulate all the shots. Here's what I'm talking about. I should have called it a master scene, right? But that's all right. So we got a master sequence, And when you create a master sequence, it gives you a variety of different options in terms of what you want to create. The shots that you want, how you want to name the shots, the first shot number, the number of digits for frame number padding, all that kind of stuff, right? So that's when I dive in there and start creating master sequences, right? For that, I was glad to have had a plan already in the form of an outline where I was working through Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and I was looking at 3 to 5 sequences per act, and then how many shots per sequence. It helped me sort of figure it out. In other productions, you may just have the script, so you have to do a script breakdown. There might be a visual effects breakdown, so you might work with a VFX producer on that one. But in this case, it's just me, so I can go right to my outline, right? This was a surprising benefit of doing my outlining and my shot planning and scene planning inside of Excel, because I can just reference it straight away, and it's fairly easy to read. In fact, because it exists in Excel as data, I could probably write a very, very simple script that can auto-generate my sequences for me based on my outline list. Yeah, it should be fairly simple to do. You can query the data in the cells. I don't know if I do that in Python or C++. That might be my first pure coding exercise inside of Unreal, actually. That's a really, really good idea. Because Unreal supports C++, but I've never been quite familiar with the connection. I don't know if you can create a node and then write in that node, or I don't know what you do, right? Or if it's just a matter of writing your, go inside of Visual Studio, writing your code, compiling it, then putting it into a proper directory, and then on next launch of Unreal, will it execute what you've written? I don't know. So I've got to investigate that. But it would be great to have it query an Excel outline and then build this for me. That would be fantastic, because I can also put in details such as naming, interior, exterior, maybe a brief, somewhere in the metadata, put a brief kind of note about what that scene is about, right? That would be hugely helpful. Okay, so there's that. Coding project next. I will stream that too when I attempt to code it, so you guys can walk along with me on my journey. All right, so there we go. That's me setting up the master sequences with the shots. And I just want to make sure I go through the entire setup with you, right? So each act is a level sequence. Each sequence is a master sequence. The master sequence creates shot folders, and each shot folder contains a level sequence. Haha, confusing. But I like this. I like thinking like this because it keeps the structure of the episode always uppermost in my mind when I'm doing my shot design. And then the next is editorial setup. So I'll leave it at that. The next time we jump in, everything I talked about now, hopefully I'll be able to do live in a session of Unreal, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, I am going to let you guys go and answer these outstanding emails. Did I connect? Am I connected? Is that what's going on? No. So it doesn't look like that connection was successful, which is a bit strange. I will need to, I think, investigate that. But I'll let you guys go, and we'll catch up with you later.